Life in small-town America moves much slower and is generally safer than it is in the city, but like with most things, there are always exceptions. Craig, Alaska, is a peaceful, safe town. Craig's population is only about 1,200 and its location on the Prince of Wales Island in the southeast part of the state makes it one of the most isolated communities in the United States. There is no road that directly connects Craig to the lower 48 states or even to Juneau or Anchorage, for that matter. Residents have to travel by boat or plane to get off the island, which is how most people there like it because it tends to cut down on transients. Craig was home to two notable killers who committed a murder as part of a bizarre plot in 2004. At the center of the case was the 48-year-old victim named Lauri Waterman and her 16-year-old daughter Rachelle, who some believed was a Svengali who orchestrated the murder, while others think she was another victim. By all accounts, Lauri Waterman had helped create a perfect American family. Her husband Carl Dock owned a real estate business that provided a comfortable life for the couple and their two children, Rachelle and her older brother, Jeffrey. Lauri dedicated much of her time to keeping house for her family, but she also helped out with the family's finances by working as a special education teacher's aide in the local public schools. She dedicated a considerable amount of her free time to the family's church and was also active in other local civic groups. In 2004, the Watermans appeared to be an idyllic American family. But underneath the surface, deep-seated problems lurked within the Waterman home. At first glance, Rachelle Waterman was like most other 16-year-old American girls in 2004. She played on her high school's volleyball team, sang in the church choir, and competed on her school's academic decathlon team. But all of that was just a facade the teenager kept up for outward appearances. Rachelle was interested in all of those things at one point in her life, but when she turned 15, her interests changed. Rachelle began writing an internet blog titled My Crappy Life, which chronicled the many perceived problems in her life. Most of the blog was just typical teenage angst, but there was also some vitriol directed at Lauri Waterman. The mother and daughter continually clashed about a variety of issues, including Rachelle's choice of friends. Lauri wanted her daughter to focus on academics and sports, while Rachelle wanted to spend more time with her friends. Carl Westerman was largely absent from the conflicts, and instead, he left the house rules and discipline of Rachelle up to his wife. He thought that his daughter was going through a normal teenage phase, and as difficult as it may be for the adults in the house, she would come through it in a year or two. He did not especially like some of the people his daughter was hanging around, so he let his wife tell Rachelle why she needed to steer clear of such characters. The conflicts between Lauri and Rachelle became more heated, and they increasingly focused on her relationships with two men, Radel and Jason Arrant. Rachelle Waterman met Radel shortly after she began her rebellious phase. At 24 years old, Radel was nearly 10 years older than Rachelle. Rachelle was attracted to Radel for all of the reasons that a girl would find an average-looking adult male attractive. Also, he did not live with his parents, and he could legally buy cigarettes and alcohol. After dating briefly, Radel had second thoughts about their age difference, so he ended the relationship. Strangely, though, instead of ending the relationship cleanly, Radel introduced Rachelle to his roommate and best friend, Jason Arrant. Arrant was the same age as Radel, but he had no qualms about dating an underaged girl. Arrant and Rachelle quickly developed a sexual relationship that proved to be deadly. The closer Arrant and Rachelle got, the more she told her lover about how she was abused by her mother. As time went on, the stories of abuse progressed from verbal berating to physical attacks. Eventually, Rachelle told Arrant that she feared for her life. On November 14, 2004, Lauri Waterman was alone in the family home. Carl was in Juneau at a Girl Scouts of America conference, Rachelle was playing in a volleyball tournament in Anchorage, and Jeffrey was away in college in Washington state. The situation was not unusual. Due to the busy nature of the Watermans, the entire family was rarely together, and it was common for only one member to be home at a time. Sometime during the evening, Radel broke into the home, woke Lauri from a deep slumber, and carried her away in the family's minivan. He drove her to a logging trail on the edge of town, where his friend and co-conspirator, Jason Arrant, was waiting. Without saying a word, the two men beat the frightened Lauri. She knew her attackers and must have known what was to be her ultimate fate, but she more than likely did not know that she would have to endure such intense pain. After beating her with their fists, feet, and other instruments for several minutes, the men then decided to finish Lauri off by suffocation. Once done strangling Lauri, the duo then doused her body and the van with gas and set it on fire. According to court testimony, Lauri was still alive when they set her on fire. Word of the brutal murder quickly spread across the island. Since it was an island with limited access, the police were quickly able to narrow down their suspect pool. All roads in the investigation led to Rachelle Waterman's boyfriend, Jason Arrant. In Arrant's confession, he related a tale of a complex, yet inherently flawed murder conspiracy carried out by him and his best friend Brian Radel, at the behest of Rachelle Waterman. The police were sure of Arrant's guilt and thought Radel's involvement was likely, but doubted that Rachelle was involved in her mother's murder. Since they had no physical evidence that could tie either Radel or Rachelle directly to the murder, the investigators took the gamble of allowing Arrant to leave their custody, as he wore a wire that would implicate one, or both, of the other conspirators. In the recorded conversation between Radel and Arrant, Radel admitted his role in the murder, which was enough to issue a warrant for his arrest. On November 19, in her interview with the police, Rachelle admitted that she knew about the plot, but she stated she was not involved in its planning. When the cases were resolved, Radel received 99 years in prison, while Arrant was given 50 for cooperating with the police. In July 2011, Rachelle Waterman was found guilty of negligent homicide and sentenced to 3 years in prison. With time served, Rachelle Waterman was able to walk out from the courthouse a free adult woman. In her statement to the court, Rachelle did accept guilt, but deflected the majority of it to Jason Arrant. "I never thought anything like this could happen," said Rachelle Waterman at her sentencing. "I never thought my teenage difficulties with my mother would result in such tragedy. I never wanted my mother dead, but I know regardless of my intent, my wishes, if I hadn't associated with those men we wouldn't be here today. And if I hadn't said those things to Jason Arrant we wouldn't be here today. I am going to have to live with that. Even though I didn't want this, even though I didn't think they would ever do it, and even though I told them no, this is my fault." It appears that only Jason Arrant, Brian Radel, and Rachelle Waterman know the complete truth about her involvement in Lauri Waterman's murder.